Hello, avid readers, book nerds, and casual observers. Welcome to the Read Along brought to you by the Lit Round Table. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Anna, and this is our read along of Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson.
Brando Sando.
We're finally here. I'm finally here. You've read a lot of Brandon Sanderson, but this is my first Brandon Sanderson novel.
I have read I've read 3 of the Mistborn books and all of the Stormlight Archive books that have been published, except for the novellas. So all the main ones I've read.
Do you know what? This is not related. I mean, this is Brandon Sanderson related, but not Tress of the Emerald Sea related. But for one of my classes this semester, I get to I get to read Elantris.
Ooh, that's
excited.
one I have not read.
I'm very excited.
Nice. That was his first published novel.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it takes place in the Cosmere, which is the big world that he's developed, the universe, his own novel universe, which Tress of the Emerald Sea also takes place in.
That's great.
So,
That's great.
Yeah. So for this week, it was part 1.
Correct. Part 1.
Which was 30-ish pages.
Right. And it was 5 chapters. So, I was really, when I go through and like try to figure out our reading assignment for each read along, I opened this one up and was like, it's already divided into parts.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. The last 2 parts are quite a bit longer, so I did break that up. So be paying attention to the reading schedule for the last 4 weeks, I guess, of the read along. But
Cool.
this week we read chapters 1 through 5. So we've got the girl, the groundskeeper, the duke, the son, and the bride.
Yes.
These chapters are fairly short. I don't know that we need to go through them individually like we did before, because we're not trying to keep track of different people and timelines like we were in the last read along.
I think we're good to just dive in and just be all loosey-goosey.
Loosey-goosey. All
right. Yeah. So, Tress of the Emerald Sea, what are your first impressions of your first ever Brandon Sanderson experience?
It's not what I was expecting. I was expecting something kind of more in line with like the voice that Tolkien uses.
Okay.
Which I don't know why I was expecting that. Probably just because it's high fantasy, or like he's in that high fantasy, epic fantasy world. So I kind of assumed he would take on more of the voice and mannerisms of Tolkien, which is a bad assumption to make. But this feels more, I want to use the word casual, but I don't know if that's fair.
The prose is different.
The prose is very different.
He is an author that has been relentlessly critiqued for his, like some would say, basic approach to prose. Like, he doesn't use super flowery language or descriptions, but this feels like the most whimsical prose of his that I've ever read.
Yes. Okay, so that's just me being ignorant of what, like, of Brandon Sanderson as a whole.
And
of like,
how would you know?
Right. I have not read.
So.
Yeah. But that makes me more. Okay, I love Tolkien. Don't get me twisted here.
It's easy to get lost in the weeds, though. Like, we don't need to describe this tree or this sunrise for 2 paragraphs.
Correct.
Like,
So when I see the like sheer volume of Brandon Sanderson's other books, because I assumed they were written like Tolkien, I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to take me forever because they're going to be so wordy and difficult. Maybe I should reevaluate that.
I think he has said before that he never wants prose to get in the way of the storytelling for him. Oh. So he tries,
That's he
tries really hard to make his books super accessible. I wouldn't say necessarily easy to read, because especially like the Stormlight Archive books, they're like, one of them is definitely like the length of 2 smushed together, 2 standard novels. Right.
But if you're talking about a long book that's written in a way with accessible prose that is significantly different than a brick written like George R. R. Martin or J.R.R.
Right.
Tolkien.
Right. Yeah. And those books are some of the most satisfying like reading experiences I've ever had. Like
Okay.
they're so good.
Okay.
But anyway,
I'll move them up. I know that's not what we're talking about today, but you asked me what I thought of the prose, and
yeah.
that was
Yeah.
where I was pleasantly surprised so far.
So the setting in this is interesting. So that's another thing that he's known for is like the magic systems and the settings, like playing
Yeah.
around with the settings and the world building and making the worlds that these stories take place on weird and different.
Yeah, a little mind bendy, not gonna lie. Because I'm also so like pollen for us. Most of the time, when we have high pollen index, it's not necessarily that you can see it, but it's still messing with you. Which is not to mean that like if there was a high concentration of pollen, you couldn't see it. I just mean that like generally people with allergies, you're not walking through a cloud and being of pollen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thinking this one's really gonna get me. But the fact that the entire sea is made of pollen that's falling from the moons, very mind bendy.
Very trippy.
And I did chuckle because I was like trying to wrap my head around it and had so many questions. And then in the text, he literally calls you out and is like, you probably have lots of questions, but now is not the time to be asking questions.
Yeah.
And I just kind of laughed because I was like, okay, I will just accept that somehow pollen is coming from the moons.
There were a lot of moments that made me laugh out loud, like audibly chuckle during this. Like when that one, and also when he's like, he mentions the seas, which aren't water, and then he's like, we're getting there, and then he moves on to something else.
Yes. Yes.
Like, you stinker.
Right, like the
Hoid.
breaking of the fourth wall. I am appreciating it. It's honestly, it's kind of making me. This whole first section, this part 1, reminds me of The Princess Bride. There are lots of things in it that I'm like, ooh, this is very Princess Bride-y.
It was reminding me of something like Good Omens.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
like that kind of. It's very whimsical and very like the narrator is telling you the story, or like.
Well, yeah. So like the narration reminded me of The Princess Bride, but also some of the story beats are kind of.
Yeah.
But we can get to that.
Yeah. So yeah, there's these 12 moons that have a stationary orbit, so they never move, and this pollen falls from the moons onto this planet.
You can
and it
always
makes
see the moon, and it's like a wart on your eye.
Yeah. And the people worship the moons, which we can all agree is far more foolish than whatever you worship, says the narrator.
That was amazing.
And like the seas are different colors because the moons are different colors. So so this is Tress of the Emerald Sea, so our sea is green for where we are on this little island, this rock that this village is on.
Of which no one is allowed to leave.
Right. Yeah. Unless you're someone like the Duke and his family. I liked the very first page, the moment where the narrator kind of calls out men for like always using food to like describe the features of women. Like her hair was like honey or wheat or whatever.
Yes.
It's like to Tress, it was adequate to just call it light brown. Which I thought that was very funny.
And then Charlie says that her hair is like sunlight, and she's like, my hair is not like sunlight. He goes, if sunlight were light brown. Which I thought was very cute, because he's not equating it to food. I thought that was very important. And then somebody, is it the king the Duke who refers to her hair as a food item. And I was like, okay. We've been told at the top that men who refer to or describe women's features as food are dangerous. That has been told to us. So, keeping that in mind.
They have a hunger that's best avoided. So interesting. Yeah. Boy and girl. Cute relationship. Charlie and Tress.
Yes.
The Duke's son, who's not the Duke's son, he's the groundskeeper. I just loved their dynamic so much.
Yeah. He's like, it's so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. She, also, her name is Glorf, which I think is so funny.
Don't judge it. It's a family name.
Yeah. But she goes by Tress because of her hair, which is just so cute. So Tress and Charlie. Actually, Charles. But the groundskeeper is Charlie.
Yes. Who trims with a sword.
Yes. Yes. And quickly takes off his signet ring whenever she comes around. But it's all just because he's a decoy.
Yes.
It's so tongue-in-cheek and it's so cute.
I love it. I love them both so much.
Yeah.
They have such a cute dynamic, and it's just so well. I really loved their dynamic and how well written it was with like just their interactions and the cleverness of it. This book feels just very clever so far.
Yes,
which
yes.
is in part because of the narrator. Hoyd, the character, is a notorious like I'm the smartest person in the room. I've always got a clever, witty comeback. Like that's his character. So
okay, so
it
Hoyd
makes sense.
comes up in other books.
Yeah, so Hoyd is this character who pops up in, I think, every Cosmere story.
Okay.
And sometimes he's going by a different name. Sometimes he even looks different, but it's always Hoyd. Like, it's, without getting, like, too deep into, like, lore and, like, potential spoilers, you know, for whoever wants to read more Cosmere novels, just be on the lookout for this character named Hoyd.
Okay.
It's the same person.
Okay.
He gets around. And
kind of makes you think of the fool in Shakespeare's plays.
exactly. That's exactly what it's like. And he's just this witty guy who's always got a clever zinger for the most part. He's always like, yeah.
Cool. I'm here
always
for
super clever, super smart.
But not always the narrator? He's the narrator of this one.
No. He is the narrator of this story. I feel like he might be the narrator of some of the other Secret Project books too, like Yumi and the Nightmare Painter and Sunlit Man. He might be the narrator in those as well.
Okay.
Because I think those also take place in the Cosmere. But yeah, there's this whole thing in like the Stormlight Archive books where he'll like tell stories kind of like this to one of the main characters to like illustrate a point or like help them work through something they're dealing with. He'll like use a story to do it. So I think it's kind of fun that he's narrating this story kind of like he would be telling a story in those books.
Cool.
Which is just quite funny.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome.
So yeah, Hoyd is I love that he's the narrator, and I'm just really curious if he comes up again or if it was just one little like thing to let you know, like, yes, I'm the narrator, and I am pretending to be a cabin boy on a ship. Like,
right.
Yeah,
right.
We'll see if he comes up again. I'm curious, but yeah.
Okay, so we've got Tress and Charlie. They have this cute little relationship. They don't actually like admit feelings to each other, but there are definitely feelings there. Like a glove, they fit like a glove on each other. Not in like cute. Not in like a like in a very like you like someone who just like is so complimentary to who you are. Not in like a weird. Like,
you are like the
way.
perfect set of gloves. Like.
Yes.
The kind that you forget that you're wearing when you go to wash your hands.
Right.
Like you said, just so well suited to you.
Yeah.
And like they have formed to the shape of your hands, and they're just so familiar, and you would be heartbroken if you lost them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's very sweet. The Duke is a jerk and doesn't like that they have this relationship.
Yeah.
And he decides that they're gonna go get the Duke's son married off to someone else.
Yep.
And so they leave. It's very sad. But Charlie makes a promise to Tress that he will send her. He's not going to allow himself to be married off to one of these other princesses because he's going to be so boring that none of them will be able to stand him.
Uh-huh.
And he's going to send her a teacup because she collects teacups from every place he goes. So, like, he's supposed to go to all 12 different kingdoms, I guess. And he's going to send her a teacup from every kingdom. She gets, is it 4 or 3? Successfully.
She gets 4, and then she's waiting on the 5th.
Yeah.
And he always like gives an explanation of like what happened. Like she always gets to hear the explanation of how he managed to get this princess to just like hate him.
He includes a letter every time, and
yeah. I loved when, so she never gets a 5th teacup, and she kind of, eventually the Duke comes back, or no, they receive word like, okay, the Duke is coming back with his son and new daughter-in-law.
No.
Not son, sorry.
They specifically said
the
with
heir,
his heir.
With his heir and his new, well, he says daughter-in-law, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Or maybe Tress is assuming daughter-in-law.
Right, anyway.
Anyway. But then they get back, and then Tress, it's quickly revealed, that's not Charlie. That is someone else.
Yeah.
Charlie's missing. And this is just one of Charlie's cousins that has been
adopted.
Yeah.
And named heir.
Yeah. And
so strange.
And then she does get from one of the people that's like on the Duke's staff, I forget the character's name, but she gets the last teacup finally, the 5th teacup. It's broken, right?
It's broken.
Like it's broken porcelain.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, oh, I thought they had him on the last princess. She was deaf, because he's like notoriously like long-winded and like talks a lot. And she was deaf. I thought they had him for sure. And then he puked in her lap.
Yeah. It's great.
But no, then the Duke was like, I see what you're doing. You're doing this on purpose. Me and the king are going to conspire to send you to the Sorceress.
In the middle of the Midnight Sea.
Yeah.
Sounds very daunting.
Yeah. Because the Sorceress is always up to no good and causing trouble.
I have a feeling I'm going to like the Sorceress, but...
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. You're like, I don't know.
I don't know either. Because, so this book is so far like subverting a lot of tropes.
Yes.
Because they even talk about, when her and Charlie are talking about the whole like damsel in distress trope and how like the knight goes off in shining armor, and then Charlie's like, do you think he shines the armor first? I think if someone got captured that I knew, I wouldn't take the time to shine it. I would go right off in dull armor and save the damsel in distress.
Which then Tress is like, do you even have armor? He's like, I would get some.
Right. They're so cute.
Oh, they're so cute. And she also makes a point of like, it's the fair maiden, Fair, which she's like, wouldn't be me, but maybe it's the fair, Fare, maiden.
Yeah.
Because she always brings him food, and she's like, well, that could be me, because I do cook. Yeah.
They're very cute. But yeah, so it turns into a Duke's son in distress with the damsel going to rescue him.
Yes.
Which I love. I love that that's what the story's doing.
Yes, so do I. So, okay. This is part of why it makes me think of The Princess Bride, because The Princess Bride also subverts a lot of expectations. I'm specifically thinking of the book. Like the movie too, yes.
Yeah.
But in the book, Wesley goes missing and Buttercup wastes away, basically. She becomes very depressed and just wastes away forever. And then Humperdinck comes and finds her, whatever.
Right.
But this, like, the hero, the man, getting taken away and lost, like, that's very similar.
Yes.
We'll see if Charlie becomes the Dread Pirate Roberts, but I think probably not. But maybe.
I hope that we get to see some pirates in this book, because pirates that sail around on a pollen ocean, that sounds interesting.
Yes, agreed. Agreed. Very much.
Oh, we didn't talk about the pollen, like what it does. So if the pollen
Oh.
gets
Oh,
wet,
gosh.
so if you breathe in the green pollen, all the pollen will like expand and like turn into vines, and you'll like grow vines out your eyeballs and
Right.
like your mouth and stuff. So like the pollen can definitely kill you if it
Right.
gets wet. It'll like do a bunch of crazy stuff. So
But salt and silver are how you can protect yourself against it. So they drink like salty water.
yeah, like salt and silver stops the killer, which is an adequate rhyme if you're the kind of barbarian that likes slant rhyme.
It's so good. It's so funny. I just was like chuckling the whole time.
I know. I love it. I love Hoyd's character so much. Even in all the other stories he's in, I love him. He's so great.
So I'm
Yeah,
curious to see what we learn about the other pollens. Because they don't all do that, do they? Or do they
No,
all?
it's different. I want to know what this midnight. If the I picture the midnight sea being like a navy blue, or like
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about what that pollen does when it gets wet.
Yeah.
Probably something extra nasty, because you know the sorceress lives there.
Right. Turns you into a cat.
Right.
Very sorceressy.
Yeah. Or the crimson sea. Like, what does the red pollen do? I don't know. There's 12 of them, though. So, like, I guess we'll find out. I wonder what they do about, like, their lakes.
Right. Because that's part of. So the rock that Tress lives on, it has water that they pull up from the aquifer. But it must be salty water. And that's part of why ships stop there, is to get water from them.
But not too salty to, like, drink.
Not like the ocean.
Yeah,
Not like
like
our
ocean
ocean.
water.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm also very perplexed. But I was
Yeah.
told by the narrator not to worry about it. So I'm choosing not to worry about it.
All will be revealed.
Yes.
Or enough will be revealed, I'm sure.
Sure. Suspending my disbelief.
Yeah. There's some stuff like that in the Mistborn books, too, about, like, the state of the world seems like it doesn't make sense, but then it, like, suddenly does make sense in the end, and you're like, oh, suddenly
Interesting.
I understand why it is the way it is.
So are all of Brandon Sanderson's books in the Cosmere, or just some of them?
No, like that, A Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England, that's obviously not, because it's, like, medieval England
Sure.
on our world.
Okay.
But all of the Mistborn books are, all the Stormlight Archive books are, Elantris, Warbreaker, those are all in this Cosmere. This, like, this one, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and Sunlit Man are also in it from the Secret Projects stuff.
So for the most part.
A lot of, the Cosmere is like his magnum opus, his big
Okay.
universe that he writes in,
Cool.
his creative universe.
I love it.
So,
What else from this section do we need to talk about?
we covered Tress, Charlie, the quest to go to rescue Charlie. He's presumably with the Sorceress in the Midnight Sea. Hoyd's running around somewhere, and I really hope we see him again. And I hope we see pirates. But yeah, she basically just decides, oh, I guess I'm going to go save him.
Yeah, because nobody else seems to care. And then she has the realization, oh, I care. I can do it. So, which is pretty cool.
I do sort of feel like, so this is a book that he wrote for his wife, that Brandon Sanderson wrote for his wife, Emily. At first, he wasn't, I don't think, going to publish it, but then she was like, you need to publish this. So here we are. But it does feel kind of like Tress is Emily and Charlie is him.
Yes.
Because he seems like the type that talks too, like, that people would say talks too much, right?
I mean, he does
and he
like
loves telling
live
stories.
streams and he tells stories and yeah.
Yeah, he loves telling Tress stories. And so it felt very much like this is the Edith and Tolkien, like
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I had the
Tress
same.
and Charlie. Yeah.
Yeah, I I had the same assumption. I was like, okay, this is them. That's very cute.
Mm-hmm.
And even, let's see, the foreword, or like, not the foreword, the dedication for Emily, who has all my love. So
Awesome.
it's cute.
Just
And the art is gorgeous.
I highly recommend all of you get the physical copy just for the sake of the art and the
Or
illustrations.
check. I mean, I think the audiobook is probably great too. But like, go check out the book from the library if you can't afford to buy it, and just look at it.
Just get your hands on the physical copy somehow. Just go to Barnes and Noble and pick it up and look at it. Go to the library.
Look at the end sheets. Like, it's just so. It's so pretty.
Very beautiful.
Very well designed. Good job,
Brandon Sanderson grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska. Says so right there.
Yeah, I did not. I somehow missed that he was a Nebraskan.
Yeah.
So that's wild. But I love it. I think it's so cool.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much all I have for this first little 30-page chunk.
Yeah.
So for the next section, is it just part 2?
Yep, just part 2.
Nice.
Makes it nice and easy. Thanks, Brando Sando. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Does he know people call him Brando Sando?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He's very in the online space. I'm pretty sure he lurks on his own Reddit thread. He's talked about that before.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
I don't want to be
aware.
disrespectful, but Brando Sando is like way too fun to say. Like, it's an auditory earworm.
Yes, Brando Sando. So. When we get to the end of this book, we'll probably hit what's called the Sanderlanche, which is what people call the climax of his books, where it's just like an avalanche of crazy, exciting, thrilling things, and you like can't put it down and have to just read it all in one chunk. Ooh, yeah.
I'm excited.
The Sanderlanche. It's coming.
I'm very excited.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I loved our last read along, but I am really enjoying and ready for something a little more whimsical.
Yeah, it's just lighter. I feel like it's a breath of fresh air. I can breathe.
Yeah.
Which, not that, again, we loved the last series, but it was dark, you know. It was very, very moody.
End of the world apocalypse. So this feels like there's already a lightheartedness to this that I'm very much appreciating. So.
This is like bright fantasy, very hopecore.
We have an episode about that. Anyway.
Shameless plug. So part 2.
Part 2 for next time.
Alrighty. Well, I guess until next time, happy reading.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Later.